welcome back to Mark Holbit's Vlog, everyone. Thanks for joining in on this absolutely magnificent day. Sun shining again. That's always a great day to take the F Type out for a drive. So here we are, and two things I want to talk about today. And I'm sure each and every one of you can appreciate these two items. The first one is, what does the future of the F Type look like? Are they going to continue building these fine cars? After all, maybe not everyone's got the budget or the finances in place now, or maybe you're just ready to make a move in a couple of years. Are there going to be new models out, say in 2022, available for your purchase and consumption? As well, I want to talk about why are these cars so damn fast? We really need to narrow in on that. I think it's pretty obvious. There's some easy ones, but it's not just about the speed. We all know they look great, they sound great. But for me, what is it? What are all the little things that make these things as incredibly quick as they are? We obviously know the drivetrain's a big one, but let's talk about a few of those items. And hey, if you guys think of something that I haven't mentioned already, please do drop a line. I'd love to hear it, because every day you'll learn something is a win in my books. So first I want to talk about what the future of the F Type looks like. I mean, there's no secret. It's been around for a while, and unfortunately now with all this silliness and this talk about going pure electrification by every single manufacturer, at the years kind of starting in 2023, I mean, Lamborghini's already identified that. They said by 25 they're going to be fully electrified to some degree or another. Audi is already going down that train, and they're figuring within the next couple of years they won't have an ICE engine available. Definitely by 2035, most countries have already said they've mandated or they're going to get on the wagon completely, and by that time it'll be very difficult to find an internal combustion engine type vehicle like the F Type R, for example. And that's all very disappointing, because these cars are absolutely magnificent. And that's why I can't blab enough about these cars. And it's unfortunate that we're going into this world. Now, I've got to believe that there's going to be a strong, long transition period. So the beauty is, whatever is going to be released over the next 2 to 3 to maybe even up to 5 years on ICE engines, you'll be able to continue hopefully driving that for the next 10, 15 years and beyond. But what is the future actually look for the F Type? Well, first of all, rumor has it now in 2022, the F Type is going to shed a couple of engines. Yes, that's right, they are still going to have the F Type R in similar form as this. Now, this has the 5-liter supercharged V8. This makes 550. The new generation car makes 575 in the F Type R format. But they're going to drop the 4-cylinder, they're going to drop the 6-cylinder engines, they're going to drop the manual gearbox. But what they will provide you is a P450 that makes about 444 horsepower, which will be a lot of fun as a base V8. So it'll be a V8 engine as well. And again, as I say, it's just a detuned version of what we got going on at the 575 horsepower level. But either way, you're going to have that great sound, you're going to have the V8 essence in Jaguar, and it's going to be a lot of fun to drive. You're also going to have the possibility of going rear-wheel drive for certain models, and of course 0 to 60 times you're going to be in that 3.5 and the 4.5 second respectively for the 575 and the 450 horsepower versions respectively. Now that's all very, very good news that the F Type isn't totally getting rid of the V8 engine. But let's do a quick walk around. I'll show you what my car has for it, and then we'll talk about how the newest car, the 22, might be updated on that front. Now, fortunately, in 2022 model, you're going to have 20-inch rims, regardless of whether you're talking about the P450 or as well the 575 horsepower. I mean, the big things are, of course, you have, this is going to look a little different. You have those noodly type vents on the newer car. The newer car also is going to have the horizontal lights, as I've already showed in other videos. Instead of, they're going to do away with this. The front grille is going to look a little different. This centerpiece is quite different. It's got the big mouth grille, certainly on the newer version. Circling around, obviously the wheels in general are going to be quite different. And of course, most of this stays fairly the same, but the new car has a little more edgier lines here. This is more squared off. You'll notice on this version here, things are a little more rounded off. This new version actually has a little more squared lines, so the rear taillight assembly is a little different. And down here, you're going to have a slightly different exhaust configuration. And then, of course, the rear diffuser here, you're actually got another part that comes down with a center T. And so that's sort of the newer design. That's the big difference on the outside of these cars. Inside, the newer car is going to have slightly changed cosmetics through the interior of the car. You'll find seats are slightly different. The big change, of course, here I've got the analog gauge cluster. The newer cars are still going to have the digital as introduced this year. So the center cluster there will be all just digital. Otherwise, most of the controls will be very much the same, and the majority of the interior will likely look very much like this car does. So at the end of the day, it's great to hear that Jag has decided to extend the F Type for at least another year in 2022. So for those of you who think that, hey, maybe I'm just about ready to get on the wagon, don't forget, they may be available in 2022, but you can start placing your orders now. Starting prices are around $72,000 for the P450, and if you want to step up to this version, you're a little over 100 grand on the US scale. But either way, great cars in any format. So let's move on in and talk about a few of the things why, you know, when I get behind the wheel, why these things are so impressively fast. It's not just about the great engines that are buried under the hood, because not every F-Type has the 5-liter V8. Obviously, we have different variations of, you know, there's V6s, and now there's also a 4-cylinder turbo. There's different engines, and they're all relatively quick. So it's more than just a drivetrain, but I'll show you really quickly here. There it is. Circle around. And of course, what we have here is the awesome 5-liter V8 supercharged right here. That's this little piece of iron down in here, or aluminum. That's the housing for the supercharger. You just got to pull this away and you can find that and expose it. But it's a supercharged V8 here that makes a wonderful 550 horsepower. And now in the newer versions, it even gets tuned to additional 25. So now they're 575 horsepower. In the standard R, which is the outgoing in this generation, the SVR, uses that drivetrain. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter where you come from, the kind of car you've been driving, anytime you infringe on that 600 horsepower range of power output, you're going to have a fast car. There's no question about it. One of the most impressive driving experiences I had a few years back was the brand new redesigned BMW M5. And I drove the competition model. I was absolutely blown away by that performance. Just a little over 600 ponies. Probably beats this car in a straight line, but it does lack some of the character that these cars have. And that's why I kept cycling back to the F-Type R. Now again, M5, you can never go wrong. It is truly an awesome driving machine. But the engine on these cars is one part. Now you can get other variations of drivetrain that go under the hood of these wonderful F-Types. Of course, with the V6, as I mentioned before, you have engines depending on the 4 cylinders, the 6 or what have you. Engines anywhere from 300 horsepower in the 400 range, and of course into the 5s. 5 and 550, and then of course now 575 is a top-end model. Now, even as a baseline, you think 300 horsepower in the 4-cylinder. Do you remember a bunch of years ago when the Porsche 911 Turbo had 300 horsepower from their 3.3-liter flat 6? That car was one of the quickest accelerating cars on the market. Now, granted, it was a lot lighter than these. I mean, those weighed down around 2,800 pounds. These are substantially more than that. But still, the point of the matter is that was one of the fastest cars on the market. It killed everything from Lamborghini to Ferrari. That's right, the 911 Turbo was blisteringly fast, and I had one. I know, they were great, and they tuned up very well too. But 300 horse is a great place to start. So you'll never be able to say 300 horsepower makes a slow car. But there's other things. It's more than just the engine. I mean, just look at the aero on these cars. I mean, when you have aerodynamics like this, I don't have to be a rocket scientist here to evaluate and assess how the flow of the lines look and how air is naturally going to flow, because the lines are very smooth and supple and they flow. I mean, you get this rounded flow. Look at the front end. It even kind of comes down to a point, so you'll have airflow to the rad just enough, but you'll still have enough that can potentially flow over this. The car definitely has sort of that flow look. It looks very sleek, and it's meant to cut through water, air, whatever. And I mean, even looking at the fenders, you know, sure, you got the flares to accommodate the wheels, but they flow smoothly. I mean, just look at how they kind of flare out gradually to accommodate the wheels. And all of that natural soft curves is what it takes to essentially allow air to flow through it nicely. So another thing that actually helps is the door handles go flush. As you can see, they're sort of shaved. So there's one less item that's protruding at high speed. As little as that appears to be, it does actually make a slight bit of difference. Then we circle around here. So then you look at the back. I mean, it actually has a very sleek back end. Now, granted, it does have a pop-up wing that comes up at about 70 miles per hour and drops back down at about 50. But regardless, it's a very small wing. It does offer some aero, which does provide some downforce for the vehicle at higher speeds, which does give you a little more sure-footed grip, which definitely is a good thing. But it's not overly large. It's not those giant chassis wings that, you know, are about 1 foot in width and, you know, 6 feet across, that are essentially, you know, great for downforce, but at some point, you know, you're fighting the wind, of course, too much, and, you know, that does hamper the speed. These are meant for speed. These cars are sleek, and even with the wing up, as I say, they basically just cut through the air nicely. Then, of course, you have aero underneath the car. There's no shock. A lot of cars now are using rear splitters and diffusers. But I mean, if you look at this here even, you know, they've got the air diffused through here nicely, and you'll notice it slopes upwards. So the air just flows out this way. And it's all about the coefficient of drag. Very little of it back here. Now, of course, I might add, lots of flow through there. There's lots of opportunities for the air to flow away from the car, giving it that sleekness. Again, even through the underside of the car. And the same thing goes for the front end. Obviously, we have a front splitter that's going to provide a little downforce for the car at higher speeds, but without getting exaggerated. It just provides enough there to give it what it needs to keep those front wheels planted. I mean, you don't want to get light on the front end, and this will slightly help that. So it's got the aero to keep the car sleek, and it's even got some active aero. But there's another thing that actually helps these things go even quicker than, you know, a lot of other cars in its sort of segment. And we'll talk about the whole transmission situation. Here, let's take a look. Now, if you look right there, we have the ZF 8-speed automatic transmission. Obviously, in the majority of these F-types, that's what you're going to find there. And that's no different right here in my car. But I'm going to be a little bit of a Cliff Clavin here and spit out some statistics for you. Did you realize that transmission is tuned to operate in 200 millisecond per shift? So yes, very, very fast for an automatic transmission. It also allows you to skip past gears in the event if you need a sudden aggressive downshift or what have you. It will actually skip gears. It doesn't force you to be fully sequential. So it's very versatile, shifts very, very fast. Now, what is 200 milliseconds? You can't even barely blink that in 200 milliseconds. But let's compare it to some real workhorse performance track machines. How about the Ferrari Scuderia, 60 milliseconds? Yes, that's absolutely ridiculously breathtaking. But even a car that is known to be an absolute track monster, how about the Porsche 911 GT3? That Porsche, with its PDK or dual clutch transmission, shifting as hard as it possibly can, will shift gears in as little as 100 milliseconds. That's only double the speed of this. I mean, that just goes to show that this car shifts almost as quick as a PDK dual clutch transmission by Porsche, but is far more drivable. It's lighter, so it pays dividends there on the weight penalty. And it's it's much more affordable if something goes off the rails. I mean, the PDK transmissions are very, very expensive when they break. ZF transmissions aren't cheap either, but they're far less expensive to maintain. And quite frankly, this is a great place to start. It's really one of the best transmissions out there. Did you realize that there really isn't one critic? I've watched countless videos and I've done enough research and I've driven the wheels off this myself already to know that there's very few times that transmission doesn't do what you want it to. It almost reads your mind. It starts to adapt to your driving style. It shifts so fast between gears that it doesn't seem to matter if you shave 10 or 20 milliseconds off its existing shift time. It's so quick already. So realistically, performance and weight gains, the transmission in this also does provide some speed benefits. These are absolutely incredible cars. And if you go with the manual gearbox, obviously you're going to lose a little bit of that forward speed, but you will gain in the overall excitement. But you can only get the manual in the V6 versions, in certain V6 versions, and unfortunately that's going away here coming up. Now there's another key reason why these cars are as quick as they are. It's more than all the mechanics and the fact that it has a reasonable driveline loss and the performance from the engines and the quick shifting transmission and the aero on the vehicle, but there's other things. And one key element, yes, it's a Jaguar, and they're generally known to be heavy and plump cars and powerful, smooth cruisers, but they did something different with the F-Type. And I'm sure most people know this already, but I have to point out that a lot of that heft and weight that was plumped into this car was offset by the massive use of aluminum in this vehicle. Yes, that's right. The majority of the body panels are either plastic or they're aluminum. So a lot of the external body panels does shave a lot of weight. And realistically, take the engine and gearbox out of here, I probably weigh more after a large Thanksgiving dinner. These cars are light when you get rid of all of the luxury amenities. So at the end of the day, these cars are fast as hell, they're fun, they sound great, and honestly, it's great to see that Jaguar has yet extended it one more year. Hopefully, yet one more year beyond that. We'll see. Every single year you gain is a win in my books. Maybe, once I mile this car out, who knows, maybe I'll buy another one. We'll see. But I love these F-Types, and for those that are considering buying one, take one out for a drive. I'm not going to tell you to buy it, but take one for a drive. I think it'll sell itself. It sure did for me when I drove this back-to-back with a 911. That's saying a lot. So thanks again, everybody. Glad to see each and every one of you again. And please, again, drop a line. If I haven't touched on something that makes these cars impressively quick above and beyond what I've spoke of, be sure to drop a line. Love to hear from you, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Catch you real soon. Bye-bye.